So this is an introduction to my package called dichotomousKey, which is used for handling dichotomous-key table and dichotomous-key data structures in our language for biology classification. So if you have no idea what a dichotomous key is, it's probably an easy way to understand it by looking at a really simple example. So, for example, if I want to classify myself as some organism, I can start with those series of questions. I can start with the first question: Am I animal-like or am I plant-like? Well, certainly I'm moving. I'm animal-like. Just for an easy example, I go to the second question to classify myself as an animal. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't. Like I can have a second question: Do I live on land or do I live in water? Well, I live on land. I'm not living in, Monty Python. So I go to the third question. I classify myself as a land animal. So for land animal, you could ask some more detailed questions. So in this case, I ask myself: Do I have feathers or do I have skin or hair? So I'm not an angel, so I'm not a bird. So I don't have feathers, I'm not a bird, I have skin and hair, and I classify myself as a mammal. Like, there are restrictions from this dichotomous key table. I cannot further classify myself as to show which kind of mammal do I belong to, because so far this dichotomous key list only give me this much of information. And if you have other organisms, for example, if you have a plant, you may go to the second branch of the first question, and still for each step you only get one question with two outcomes. So what is the importance of doing this? So first, it's very efficient. It's efficient because if I have n questions being asked, for example, I answered 3 questions as I classify myself as a mammal, and then I stop there. I can actually classify myself among 2 to the power of n species at its best, because for each step, I can have 2 different outcomes. So they can be quite efficient if it's used correctly. Second, it's deterministic. For example, if I have one specimen of some species, and I have observations from the organism, and thus I have the phenotypes as observations, I can always get one single outcome because each question is a deterministic question. Now this requires a lot of different requirements. For example, when you ask the questions for classification, each question must be very specific. If you ask something that is not specific, or if you ask something that has more than 2 outcomes, sometimes you don't always guarantee to get a result. But the good thing is when you ask those questions, it's probably the easiest to use a true or false statement, or like, do you have feathers or not? You either have that or you don't have that. So that's one of the explanations for the dichotomous table. But it's given a list or it's given a dichotomous table, it sometimes doesn't follow this specific format. For example, I can have a table here doing the same thing as the list. So first, I start with the first father node, and he asked me 2 questions: Am I animal-like? I just write it in short, or am I plant-like? If I am an animal, I can go to the an index called let's call that 2. So when I answer the first question, I look at the column that I satisfy. For example, an animal like, and at the end of the table, there's a number showing the next index I should go to answer the next question. For example, I answer question 2, and in this case, question 2 is just do I live on land or do I live in water? So this is land, water, and then live in land, and I go to maybe 3, maybe some other numbers, so I can answer the next question correspondingly. So speaking of the abstract meaning of this table and this list, they are exactly the same, because, well, they store the same nodes and edges. So these are really the 2 things that make the structure complete. Either you either use a table or use a graph to classify something, but I think it's somewhat more clever to use computers to do this, because when the table gets especially large, or if the graph gets especially large, or sometimes you want to do some special tricks that is quite complicated. It's easy to get it wrong, or otherwise it's still time consuming. So next I will show you how to use the function implementations to carry such algorithm and do some more complicated calculations. So if I share the screen here, I can I think this is okay. If I share the screen here, I can first install the package using the package called devtools, because this is so far an exploratory package, so it's so far not on CRAN. You have to use devtools to install it, but it's quite easy. You just run those 3 lines, and these are in the README as well, to install it from R. After you've done that, you require the dichotomous key to load the package, and then I've included some sample data frames for you to look at. So this is a table we looked at on the whiteboard. This is exactly the same, not correct, but an easy thing to play with when you get familiar with that. So to classify something, I can use the function called dkClassify. So this is the functionality we use to pull up a interactive interface. So I can specify me is dkClassify. You have to specify which dichotomous key you're using, because in different books there might be like different ways people classify things, and sometimes you want to be very specific on which system you are using. But in this case, I'm just being lazy, so I just put an example out. So okay, so he asked me the first question. Hey, if you type in 1, you answer plant. If you type in 2, you answer your animal X and an animal. I type in 2 here, and the second question, just doing repeatedly the same thing in the computer instead of in the instead of on a whiteboard or just doing it manually. It shouldn't get quite complicated. And if I take out the result, it shows that I'm an animal. So far it's great, but it's not interesting. What can we do with the dichotomous key table? So given a species, can I use some other functionality to extract back the the phenotypes that we expect from the specimen. For example, if I get a mammal, what species, like if I get a mammal, what properties do we expect from a mammal? So we can do DK extract, and just using the same dichotomousKey table, but this time I asked myself, or I asked the computer, what property would I have if I am a mammal? So in the result, it's showing me a mammal should be an animal. It should live on land, and they can have hair. So this is exactly the same idea when you get the species from here and extract back those output of the questions. So given the species, give me back those phenotypes. So that's exactly the same. And oh, sorry, it probably can't. Okay, it's possible, right? It's okay. So this is exactly the same. If you ask the computer to find the mammal here and ask it to extract back, so doing the reverse operation. So this is quite the same. Okay, so on the whiteboard we have shown that the list-like structure of dichotomousKey work exactly in exactly the same way as the table-like dichotomousKey. In fact, we can do such list and table conversions using the function called dk as list. So I have included the dk as list to taking a data frame, and it gives you a list that shows the structure, but in some ways, it's not easy to view this outcome because it looks messy. One good way is to use the package called hmisc and use the function called list tree. So this is somewhat more like a list structure we've seen on the whiteboard. Conversely, you can use list as dk, but I'm not going to show this because it just works very easily. Okay, so the next the next thing is that when you want to divide labor in the dichotomousKey, in the making of some dichotomousKey, what do I mean by that? So let's start with the easy one. So, for example, I have a list starting with animal, with any organism. Okay, so if I start with such a list, and then I have a dichotomousKey table that could classify any living organism to maybe like bird, and this is maybe the DKEG the DK example data frame do, and it has this table, right? Remember, the list table are exactly the same, and what I also have is a smaller dichotomousKey that only classifies bird. So it starts with bird, and it classifies this to maybe big bird and small bird. So this is quite an interesting way. So if I start with this, can I get all the way down to here? And this is the process that we combine two dichotomousKey table together. And it is in the previous tutorial, I think I showed one way to convert this and this to the list form, and then use the list form to kind of append this node into this node. But we don't have to do that because handling table like edge dollar frame or edge list are somewhat easier. So this is an analogy in graph theory and edge list. I can have such a table showing like big bird and the small bird, and in some way I append this at the back of this list, but it doesn't end with that. We have to get the index of bird and find this reference column. So this is a reference column and point it to the to the father node of the bird, and this is not very hard algorithm, but I have included this as the function called dkappend. Okay, so to show you how this works, I've included this example. I think. Okay, so yeah, dk append. If I want to combine two tables together, okay, so this is my dk bird, and I want to include this at the back of some larger data frame. Okay, so this is the outcome. So it starts with classifying plants, any organism, start with plants and animals. And if I classify something to bird, it gives me big and small bird. It is worthy to notice that the most refined column, or the most specific columns, the most specific rows has reference 0, which means classification ends there. So in the previous data frame, if I classify something as a bird, it ends with 0 here, but in the new table, it points out 5, which directs you to the second dichotomous key table in 0. So this is my so this would be the result. And if I can join two dichotomous key table together, I can also snip two of the. I think I can also split two tables apart, and this is very easy because suppose this is the new dichotomous key table, and if I want to snip some sub dichotomous table, I just need to know what do I start with. For example, in the last example, we used the dkeg. So dk example to append dk bird. So the bird will start here. If I want to extract the bird dichotomous key table from the previous step, I just like invert it from here. But you don't have to start with bird. You can start with any nodes. For example, I want the table, I want a subtable only classifying plants. Now, why this is useful? Why partitioning could be potentially useful? If you get a really big table and you want to do some classifications repeatedly in some smaller data frame, it saves you a little bit of time, because usually when you get a number of specimens, you already know that they belongs to, for example, insects. They are all specimens of insects, specimens of butterflies. You already have some kind of assumptions of what species they belong to, so it could work. But in terms of using the computer and using computer memories, partitioning the like the data frame can, or just extracting a sub table enables you to copy more versions of the dichotomous key table, so you could do classification in parallel, and that saves you a lot of memory because you don't have to, you no longer have to use the entire data frame, and this also works quite easily because I could use this. I could use DK partition to get, for example, I extract all the classification among all the animal from my previous dichotomous key table, and I get this. So the ID doesn't start with 1 because we are not starting. So we do not start with the largest node. We started with animal, and animal has reference to file node ID 3. But we can always reduce it, and I've written the function here, dk reduce, so it works just like any of the dichotomous key table. Okay, so and there are more functionality you could use. You could use this to classify is a small bird, and land animal is a bird, and animal is a fish, and land animal. And if you run this code, it gives you a true or false value. If you apply this to a larger data set, I could have some fieldwork findings containing my observation recordings. So, right. So for example, suppose I have one. I encounter those animals in fieldwork, and I want to do some bird count. No matter it's big bird or small bird. It also hold on. It shouldn't be the capital letter bird. It wasn't very specific. But if you make yours dichotomous key table, it might be helpful to hold on to certain conventions. For example, always use capital letters. Always use lowercase letters. It's up to you. So in this way, I can count how many birds I have here. Just this is nothing but repetition of the previous let's say previous work. And more importantly, if you have some large data set of species, for example, I have for example, in one forest, if I have many species, if you count the biodiversity, you sometimes don't just want a biodiversity of subspecies. You want the species of you want the diversity of some species. So let's say you have this much species, and you get you can use the classification called DK is a something. They just tell you if something is a subspecies of something, and you get a true or false table whether certain subspecies is in your list. And when you compute how many subspecies your forest have, it's not going to be equal to maybe some number of distinct species that forests have. But so far this get no real applications because I have no data I have no real life data to do this. But if you write specific function to identify if some species contains something using a wrapper from this function, it's easy to show that it will work out properly. So and some future development, probably abstraction by row index for data sets for more than 4 columns. And that is when I compute the tables, the output of the function don't just give me tables, but instead the row number of the desired result from the original data frame. In this way, even if my data sets have more than 4 columns, it still gives me a result, because when you store the species, it's likely that sometimes you want to store a 5th column other than the ID column, phenotype column, genotype. Genotype related column and the reference column. You may have some 5 column or 6 column of maybe contains a link to the website that shows what the more information you can get from for this type of species, or maybe you have an image of that species that could be useful. So such abstraction could help increase the usability of this model. Okay, so that's so far for the development of my package. If you have further questions or you have bug reports, feel free to make a GitHub pull request or GitHub issue, and I will try to fix the problem and probably do some enhancement later. Thank you very much.